Hi everybody, my name is Holger. I want to share with you the fascinating view to the Earth from satellite images. Today we travel to the Antarctic ice sheet. The Antarctica ice sheet has a size of 14 million square kilometers. The second largest ice sheet is the Greenland ice sheet located in the Arctic with an extension of 1.7 million square kilometers. Ice sheets are complexes of very large glaciers. But how are glaciers formed? Glaciers begin to form when snow remains and accumulates long enough to transform into ice. So if snow accumulation exceeds the annual melt over decades to centuries, this ice and snow flows slowly over land under its own way. At the lower part of the glacier we have the ablation zone, where the ice sheet loses mass by evaporation and melting. Presently 12.5% of land area on Earth is covered with glacial ice, including more than 200,000 glaciers, ice caps and the ice sheets of Greenland and Antarctica. Glaciarized areas cover over 15 million square kilometers. During the maximum point of the last ice age, which ended about 12,000 years ago, glaciers covered about 32% of the total land area. Glaciers and ice caps store about 78.7% of the world's fresh water. If all the ice melted, they would raise sea level about an estimated 70 meters. Let's have a more detailed look at the Antarctica ice shield. It is a continental glacier covering 98% of the Antarctic continent with an area of 14 million square kilometers and an average thickness of over 2 kilometers. It contains 26.5 million cubic kilometers of ice, which is equivalent to 61% of all fresh water on Earth. Maybe I ask an absurd question. How much do you believe weighs all the Antarctic ice together? Well, a cubic kilometer of ice weighs approximately 0.92 metric gigatons, meaning that the ice sheet weighs about 24,380,000 gigatons. The surface is nearly continuous, and the only ice-free areas on the continent are the dry valleys, the summit nunataks of the Antarctic mountain ranges and sparse coastal bedrock. These transantarctic mountains divide into East Antarctic ice sheet and West Antarctic ice sheet. And there's a relatively small Antarctic peninsula. Because the East Antarctic ice sheet is over 10 times larger than the West Antarctic ice sheet and located at a higher elevation, it is less vulnerable to climate change than the West Antarctic ice sheet. In the 20th century, the East Antarctic ice sheet had been one of the only places on Earth which displayed limited cooling instead of warming. But the bed of the West Antarctic ice sheet is located in places more than 2,500 meters below sea level. It would be steep if the ice sheet were not there. The West Antarctic ice sheet is classified as a marine-based ice sheet, meaning that its bed lies below sea level and its edges flow into floating ice shelves. Antarctica is the coldest and driest continent on Earth, as well as the one with the highest average elevation. The highest mountain in Antarctica, Mount Vinson, rises 4,892 meters above sea level. Antarctica is so cold that it is the only place on Earth where atmospheric temperature inversion occurs every winter. Elsewhere, the atmosphere on Earth is at its warmest near the surface, and it becomes cooler as elevation increases. During the Antarctic winter, the surface of central Antarctica becomes cooler than middle layers of the atmosphere. We note contrasting temperature trends across parts of Antarctica. This means that some locations lose mass, particularly at the coasts, while others that are more inland continue to gain it. Most of the 20th century, the ice sheets made very little contribution to sea level and were nearly in balance in annual snowfall gain and ice or meltwater loss. However, the stability of the ice sheets has changed considerably in the 21st century. Improved modeling shows that the West Antarctic ice sheet is very likely to disappear even if the warming does not progress any further. And only reducing the warming to 2 degrees below the temperature of 2020 may save it. The Antarctic ice sheet melt season typically lasts from November to April. It is believed that the loss of the ice sheet would take place between 2000 and 13,000 years. Also, several centuries of high emission may shorten this to 500 years. 3.3 meters of sea level rise would occur if the ice sheet collapses. On average are melting 2.5 meters of ice every year. By 2100, net ice loss from Antarctica alone is expected to add about 11 centimeters to global sea level rise. Are there any people living on the Antarctic ice shield? There are no native Antarcticans and no permanent residents in Antarctica, but scientists do live there temporarily throughout the year. According to Aurora expeditions, there are over 60 scientific stations across the continent, which are usually more populated in summers than winters. In summer, about 5,000 scientists, in winter, 1,000. According to Polynesian narratives, Maori people may have been the first to reach Antarctic waters in the 7th century. It is suspected that Maori navigators were likely the first humans to set eyes on Antarctic waters and perhaps the continent. Captain James Cook became in January 1773 the first recorded European navigator to cross the Antarctic Circle. In January 1820, Antarctica was first sighted by European explorers. Thaddeus von Bellingshausen reported seeing an ice shore of extreme height during a Russian expedition to the Antarctic. On 15th December 1911, at 3 p.m., Roald Amundsen became the first person to reach the South Pole. The 5 men, Amundsen, Hansen, Bjaaland, Hassel and Wisting, made careful observations of the site for the next 2 days and left behind messages and spare equipment for Scott's team. The whole team arrived safely back at base camp on 26th of January, having traveled more than 1,600 miles in 99 days. On 18th January 1912, Scott and his final team, Captain Oates, Lieutenant Bowes, Petty Officer Evans and Dr. Wilson, reached the South Pole. They found Amundsen's tent and realized that they had been beaten. "Great God," wrote Scott, "this is an awful place and terrible enough for us to have labored to it without the reward of priority. Now for the run home and a desperate struggle. I wonder if we can do it." The party left the next day. On 17th February 1912, Petty Officer Edgar Evans died in his tent after collapsing during the trip back. On 16th to 17th March 1912, Scott diary records Captain Lawrence Oates' death. According to Scott, Oates walked out of his tent with the words, "I'm just going outside and maybe sometime." His body was never found. On 29th of March 1912, the remaining 3 explorers were around 11 miles from the final depot at 1 ton when Scott wrote his final diary entry. "We shall stick out to the end, but we are getting weaker, of course, and the end cannot be far. It seems a pity, but I do not think I can write more. For God's sake, look after our people." Are there any plants in the Arctic? The majority of the Antarctic continent is covered by permanent ice and snow, leaving less than 1% available for colonization by plants. Most of this ice and snow-free land is found along the Arctic Peninsula, its associated islands and its coastal regions around the edge of the rest of the Antarctic continent. Even in the most inhospitable ice-free habitats, such as inland mountains and nunataks, life still can be found. There are no trees or shrubs, and only two species of flowering plants are found: the Antarctic hairgrass and the Antarctic pearlwort. These occur on the South Orkney Islands, the South Shetland Islands, and along the western Antarctic Peninsula. Canadian and New Zealand scientists have found living microbes buried deeper than perhaps ever before in Antarctica's ice-free dry valleys. The scientists have discovered long-lived colonies of insecticidal fungi and a common species of penicillium bacteria at two sites in two salty soil horizons more than 3 to 8 centimeters beneath Antarctic surface pavement. Frozen environments were once thought to be lifeless, but permanently frozen environments contain a lot of living microbes called psychrophiles. Those microbes, especially bacteria, have adapted to live in cold environments. The term comes from the Greek psychros, meaning cold and freezing, and philia, meaning loving. They survive in veins of liquid. The most abundant and best-known animals from the southern continent are penguins, whale seals, albatrosses, seabirds. Probably less known are a range of invertebrates such as krill, which forms the basic of the Antarctic food web. Most of the animals of the South Pole region are seasonal visitors. Conditions are just too hard for most animals to live there in the winter. The most common birds in Antarctica are penguins. It is home to 18 different species who live in colonies dotted around the coastline. Emperor penguins are unique in having colonies on sea ice. They breed almost exclusively on sea ice near the coast of Antarctica. The chicks are ready to fledge when the sea ice edge is close to the colony, so the young penguins don't have to travel far to get their food. Adelie penguins are the most southerly breeding penguins, along with the emperor, found on continental Antarctica and sub-Antarctic islands. There are large colonies of up to 500,000 birds. Usually 2 eggs are laid, rarely 3. Incubation of the first egg takes 35 to 37 days, with the second chick being a few days behind the first. Male and female parents share egg and chick duty. They principally eat krill. There are so many penguin colonies around Antarctica that scientists are not able to count them when they visit. Instead, they use satellite data which take images from space. They are able to see locations of penguin colonies because of the reddish-brown mark on the ice. This is known as penguin guano, penguin poo. Their poo is this distinctive color because of the food they eat. Penguins live on a diet of fish, squid and krill, and it is krill which causes a penguin's poo to be the distinct reddish-brown color. Very impressive are the whales. Whales are highly intelligent animals with an elaborate social life. The young stay with the mother for over a year and feed on milk produced by the mother. Large whales are able to live indefinitely in the coldest seas on Earth. If you were to fall into the Antarctic Ocean, you would have about 15 minutes before hypothermia set in. The whales possess a blanket of blubber around the whole body below the skin, wherefore the metabolic heat is retained to the degree that the coldest seas are readily survivable. Many whales migrate to the polar regions during the summer months. There are often distinct southern and northern populations of species which go to the respective pole, none go to both poles. They feed continuously during the superproductive summer month and then live entirely on their blubber reserves for about 4 months during the breeding season in warmer waters. Not all individuals migrate, however, and in recent years some humpback whales have been found around Antarctica during the winter rather than 7,000 kilometers away off the coast of Africa where they were thought to be. Whales use sound to communicate with each other and also possibly as a means of finding krill swamps. Blue whales make the loudest noise of any animal at 180 decibels or more. These sounds can travel underwater for as far as 800 kilometers. They are very low frequency sounds down to 14 Hz, below the hearing limit of humans, though they can be felt by divers in the water at the time. So let's listen for a moment to these beautiful and at the same time strange whale sounds. Orca killer whales are on the top of the food chain. They eat many different kinds of prey such as sharks, seals, sea lions, dolphins, whales, penguins, seagulls, squid, octopuses, stingrays, crabs and sea turtles. Blue whales are the largest animals ever have lived on Earth, reaching a maximum confirmed length of 29.9 meters at up to 199 tons. Blue whales are filter feeders. Their diet consists almost exclusively of krill. There are many different seals in Antarctica. They have thick, beautiful fur coats and blubber, making them supremely adapted to the cold. There are 6 species in Antarctica: Antarctic fur seals, leopard seals, Ross seals, southern elephant seals, crab-eater seals and Weddell seals. Seals spend much of the time on or under the sea ice and catch most of their food underwater. On land they are slow and awkward, but they're wonderful and elegant swimmers. Sea eels fish, krill, squid, and leopard seals will even eat penguins or other seals. Weddell seals are animals of the ice. They live and breed further south than any other mammal. Elephant seals are the largest of all seals. They can weigh up to 5,000 kilograms. There are big differences in size between males and females. Leopard seals have a very varied diet of any animal that is small enough for them to kill and eat, which, as they are so large, gives a large range of potential prey. Krill, or in Latin Euphausia supera, are small, semi-transparent crustaceans like shrimps, about 6 centimeters in length and up to 2 grams in weight when fully grown. They can live for up to 7 years, which is quite remarkable considering the wide variety of animals that feed on them in huge quantities. Krill belong to the animals that make up the zooplankton. The zoo means that they are animals. The plankton means that they float in the upper reaches of the water column, but not able to swim against the current or migrate in a normal sense. Swamps, estimated at containing 2 million tons of krill spreading over more than 450 square kilometers, have been observed. Krill is eaten by many other organisms such as penguins, birds, or even ginormous elephant seals. Because there are so many different organisms feeding from the krill, there needs to be lots and lots of krill available, especially as they are only 2 inches long. Krill feed on phytoplankton. These organisms get their energy from the sunlight. Krill is then the main consumer of the phytoplankton. About 100 species of coastal fish belong to a group called Notheniidae, a very difficult word. They developed a protein antifreezes in their blood, allowing them to survive. The ice fish completely lack of hemoglobin, which gives them the ghosty white color. There are also many different birds at the Antarctic, for example the blue-eyed checks. They feed mainly on fish, frequently forming a raft made up of dozens or hundreds of birds that repeatedly dive down onto the shoals below, helping each other by panicking the fish into having nowhere to go except into the beak of the next bird. They are excellent divers with a record maximum dive of 116 meters. Once underwater, they tuck their wings in and use their powerful webbed feet to propel themselves. Another bird species are the giant petrels. They vomit on anyone or thing that approached them and seemed to impose a threat. They built a traditional Arctic nest of small stones. There are only 67 species of insects recorded in Antarctica, which is absolutely nothing compared to the teeming hordes on all other continents. They live in the harshest environments, places where as recently as 30 years ago it was thought that nothing could live. Like the Antarctic midge is a simple insect, no wings, a slender black body and an added lifespan of not much more than a week. There live 77 species of animals under the Antarctic ice shelf, including bryozoans like Melicerita obliqua and apelid worms like Paralospira sicula. These animals most feed on microalgae, phytoplankton. With climate change and the collapse of these ice shelves, time is running out to study and protect these ecosystems. If the entire Antarctic ice sheet melted, sea level would rise about 60 meters. The Antarctic ice sheet is an amazing landscape which gives home to a variety of living species. The ice regulates the world climate. Climate change is a huge threat for this iced landscape. I hope you've liked this video. If that's the case, please press the like button. The next video will be about the Greenland ice sheet in the Arctic. Friends, we see you soon. Until then, I wish you a great time.